All right, everyone, welcome back. In the previous videos, we have seen how would you create an Azure desk. We have changed the sizing. We have done a lot of stuff. We're not done yet. So I've discussed in the last video that we can use this swap OS disk if you have a backup or maybe a corrupted virtual machine. Let me give you some context. When I was in the support at Amazon, we get, and even in Microsoft, you get a lot of cases where customers are using VMs very very normal, no problem, and then maybe some kind of misconfiguration. Maybe somebody installed an antivirus on the operating system and then they lost RDP access, or maybe they get the blue screen of death. Or it could be any problem could happen within that machine. Somebody mistakenly disabled the RDP services or SSH or anything like that block them from accessing the virtual machine. There is a lot of techniques that you can fix it. Since you don't have console access, your only way to access this virtual machine is through the IP address and then remote desktop or SSH to that VM. But there are techniques that you can use where you can create a backup from the disk and then restore it again, or create the disk from that backup, and then you can use a helper virtual machine. So the helper virtual machine, it's a support technique where you can create a VM within the same region of the problematic VM, and then we can install, or one of the ways to do it is to install what we call it nested virtualization. So nested virtualization basically allows you to install Hyper-V role, and then it will give you console access basically. So you would attach that disk and then fix the problematic disk or boot that operating system and then check what's going on, because since the RDP is not enabled, and then once you fix the problem, then you can just detach it back and then swap the disk. So that's why we are going to see how would you use the swap OS disk as well as create a helper VM. So nested virtualization, there is kind of a rule. Basically, all of what you see over Azure or the great innovation at the end of the day, it's installed on top of Hyper-V. So Hyper-V is a virtualization software. If you didn't see my episode number 15, I talked about this before, but it's a software that you can use to create VMs, on your on-premises local data center, or even you can use something like VMware, or even Docker if you would like to create containers. But basically, nested virtualization will allow you to create Dockers or containers on top of a VM, or even you can create VMs inside a virtual machine or inside Azure VMs. So all of these kind of stuff allow you to do that. So you can create an Azure VMs, and then from that VM you can install the Hyper-V role. Now, if we take a look here, if we try to install, this is actually an Azure VM that I have created. I called it Helper VM. It's running Windows Server 2025 Data Center Azure Edition. And in these versions, the boot, for Hyper-V is not enabled. So this is the problem, is that when you try to install, let me just make this full screen. That's fine. So if you try to install the Hyper-V role here, so from the server manager, you go to next, select the role-based feature, and then you try to install the Hyper-V, it should give you an error. So if I select here and then click on add features, then it should pop up an error, tells you, hey, this is not supported. Although you are using you're meeting a specific criteria or VM type. So normally you need the minimum is V3 or V4 and above. So all of this are mentioned in the documentation, but although the type should support that, but still when you try to enable it from here, it's just going to tell you, hey, it's failed. I will just come back to it when it show up that error, but you can see here from the documentation, it tell you if to install a Docker software or Hyper-V, you need to have one of these VMs, family type like V3 or V4 and so on. So if you're meeting this criteria, then you should be able to install Hyper-V. But now if I go back here it will throw up an error. So Hyper-V cannot be installed because virtualization support is not enabled in the BIOS. Which is logic, because the newer operating system, if you used like 2016 or 2019, I think 2016, you can install it fine. You don't need that option. But then here you have to modify the the boot configuration. So what you need to do is basically run the terminal or or PowerShell as an administrator. So what we do is we're gonna open this PowerShell. Sorry, bcdedit. And then here, when you check the Windows bootloader or even the boot manager, there is no Hyper-V settings enabled. Okay, so what you need to do now is to use that command to bcdedit and then enable the Hyper-V. So what we will do is I'm just gonna paste it, and then feel free to use it. But what you will do here is you call bcdedit, or you're gonna edit the configuration of Windows, and then I would like to enable Hyper-V launch type and set it to auto. Sometimes you might find it false or true, false, sorry, it's not auto. So then you have to switch it back. So now when you enter this, you will see that the command is gonna say the operation completed successfully. Now if we run again bcdedit and then check what's happening, you will see here that the Hyper-V, there is an extra configuration under the bootloader, is set to auto. If you want to switch it off, then you can just do the same, but you do false, right? So you type false. Okay. So if we try it again, it will throw the same error. So we have to restart the VM basically to so that the effect is gonna happen. So what we will do is we will right click and then restart this virtual machine and then click OK. I'm gonna pause and come back when it's ready. Okay, the virtual machine just restarted successfully. So let me just type the password. So what we have done now with this command is we're telling Windows or the the Windows boot configuration settings hey, start Hyper-V automatically when it launch. So this is the only way that allows you to start or to enable nested virtualization on the actual virtual machine or on a virtualized environment. So now just the Windows is booting up, so let's wait and then I'll come back again. Okay, so server manager booted successfully, so let's just try to add a new role and then click on next, the helper VM, that remember the name, and then we just gonna select Hyper-V role and then click on add features. Now we shouldn't be seeing this this problem again, because since we are meeting the requirement, as I mentioned, remember the minimum is V3 family or the V4, and then if you're meeting that, then you can just actually use Hyper-V normally. So now it's loading here. I think we definitely need a better or a faster machine, so I will change that later. But now we can install the Hyper-V role, and then as you can see, it didn't throw any error. This is just an additional features, we don't need any. So we're gonna let me just go back here. Yeah, we're gonna go back, we're gonna click on next. Hyper-V is gonna be installed. So now it's passing very normal. I'm just gonna select my virtual switch and then click next. Allow the server, we don't want to create clusters, so that's fine. And then here, where is your default location of the virtual machines? So normally if you have more than one location or more than one disk, basically you're just gonna do that. But since it's a helper VM, I'm just gonna use the same the same disk here. So I will just use my my C drive. So maybe I'll just create here a folder called virtual machines. So I will type VMs, and then here I will just copy paste that path. So I just can browse. Yeah, okay, that's fine. We can just select it from here right away. C Windows, and then select my virtual machines disk folder. And then this is also the default location for the configuration. No, I want also to be on the same location. So I will just go here and then select my VMs. So now the hard disk files of the VM, it's gonna be saved here. the virtual machine configuration or the actual VM is gonna also be saved, like on c/VMs. Now it will require restart. So what we'll do is we're gonna click on. I'm not gonna restart it now. I'm gonna restart it because I will resize the Hyper-V machine. So I'll pause till the installation finish, but as you can see, it's now successfully installing the Hyper-V role. So I will pause the video and then come back when it's ready. Okay, so as you can see, the restart is pending, so we have to restart that virtual machine. But what we will do here is I'm going also to resize the virtual machine just to give it like a better CPU and memory. So I'll just use the same family here, D2S V3. That's what we are in. Like we have only 2 vCPU core. So maybe let's raise it to 8 vCPU and 32 gig of RAM. So I'm gonna resize the virtual machine, and then this should also restart the virtual machine as well. So as you can see, it's gracefully restarting the VM, and then we will come back when it's restarted. All right, so as you can see, the virtual machine started, took a few seconds. So let's just try again and then connect to that VM. All right, so now the new VM should be 8 vCPU and 32 gig of RAM and D8S V3 family. So if I go back here and then double click, let's wait till the OS boot. Now what I will do is type Hyper-V, then we should be able to see Hyper-V, the management tools installed. It's just still loading. Yeah, Hyper-V Manager. Okay, as you can see, it is now, the service is up and running. So now you can see here, this is the Hyper-V server, which we can create virtual machines. So to do so, of course, we need to create a virtual switch. So what we can do here is to enable external communication. So it will use the internet of that host. So we're gonna create external switch. We're gonna name it internet. And then we have to select the Hyper-V adapter, which is this one. And then I will just click on apply, click on apply. Yes. This should disconnect. Let's just, yeah, we should be fine. Oh, okay, there is another one already created. Okay, so there is another one already created now. So if we create a new virtual machine here, then we maybe this one is going to be Windows. Next, Gen 2, then just we're gonna, yeah, we can see the virtual switches already exist. And then here we're just gonna type OS disk, and then next. I will install the operating system later, and then click on finish. All right, so now the virtual machine is created successfully, but we need an operating system. So we have to download a Windows VM, which we will do in the next video. But as you can see, we can just start here. It will just basically keep booting, or the boot is gonna fail, because again, there is no operating system. So we have to install it like any normal laptop we have in in our computer. But in the next video, we will see how would you install the operating system. Then we start to fix the problematic other Azure virtual machine. So we will fabricate the problem, and then we see how can we fix it. So that's it for today's video. We have seen a lot. So we learned about Helper VM, nested virtualization, Hyper-V, and how can you create your own custom virtual machine. This is not Azure now. This is as if you're running this VM on premises.